We are up and running. Hello, and welcome to the live stream. Hey, we finally did it in one freaking,
We are
one thumbnail. I didn't have to make a
up
new
and
one this
running.
time. I'm learning!
Hello,
it's such
and
an arduous
welcome
process.
to the live stream.
Hey, we finally did it in... So, tell me things, guys. What do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to ask or hear, or I don't know. What's the vibe? Let's discuss stuff. So, something that I've been doing more recently is I've been studying Japanese for a little bit, and I finally started getting the hang of hiragana and katakana, which are the two alphabets used alongside kanji, but I'm just focusing on those alphabets right now, and Japanese is quite a challenging language, honestly. I've been really struggling with it, but I like the process. It's a lot of fun to work with. But yeah, learning learning German was considerably easier. But I haven't practiced it in so long that I hardly remember it, so I pretty much have to learn it again. But man, learning being able to communicate with others in their own language is pretty great. Let's see. What about the channel? What can I talk about in terms of the channel? Well, I have a video coming out tomorrow, which I'm really excited for. It's from a collaboration from two artists that I really just love listening to, and one of them is going to be the debut on the channel, which I think is really fun, and I'm really excited to share that one with you guys. But beyond that, the video I posted today, I didn't expect would get a lot of attention, but man, middle of the rhythm, collapse and hiss. Oh my gosh, dude, just the complexity. Oh my gosh, that video is probably going to be one of the most underviewed and underrated videos that I've ever posted, because I know it's not going to be popular, but oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. Like, well, that's also coming from a very biased perspective of someone who loves beatboxing, but just from a musical standpoint and how complex they are and the intricacies of their sounds, oh my gosh, it's just amazing, dude. I loved every second of making that video. It's so great. Let's see. I'm in the process of editing. What did I just finish filming earlier today? Oh yeah, I did an Austin Brown cover reaction, and I won't tell you which one. You'll have to stay tuned for that. But man, that filming that was so arduous. I loved it, but man, it was so arduous because I have I finished filming the entirety of the video. So typically my videos are, the recording session is 45 minutes to an hour, and then as I edit things, that hour becomes 45 minutes, becomes 30 minutes, typically. There's a lot that, like, there are long, let me rephrase that. There are long periods of time in my recording process that I really just sit there and think for several minutes before I even start coming up with a continuation to a sentence, let alone coming up with thoughts that I want to form and new ideas about something. So, yeah, it was really frustrating because the moment that I finished my hour-long session on one of those videos, I was just slapped in the face when I started editing it and all of my audio was lost. I couldn't retrieve it because there was no place for me to actually retrieve it from. And oh my gosh, I was so frustrated. I had to completely redo the video, and it was so frustrating. But I'm still pretty happy with how it turned out, and I'm excited to edit it. I'm sure it's still going to be just as good as the original, but man, it was so frustrating losing that audio. But overall, it's still going to be a really great video, and I hope you guys stay tuned for it. Austin Brown is a consummate professional. Have you heard his rendition of Les Miserables, Bring Him Home? That, surprise, surprise, that is the video that I was filming earlier today. And that should be posted probably within the next few days. So stay tuned for that. I'm really happy with the recording that I made after the fact, and it honestly, without really going into depth on everything that I'm going to talk about in the video, I will just give my impression of him, or of that particular piece in this upcoming statement. Man, he is a jack of all trades, let me tell you. He did such a phenomenal job with that piece. And, like, do I have my criticisms? Of course I do. But honestly, I can only speak from my own perspective. I'm not going to speak from the perspective of people who absolutely adore him and would die for him. But that being said, just from a musical standpoint, man, he did such an exceptional job. There were many things that I really loved listening to that I needed to rehear multiple times just to even process what it was that I was hearing. And yeah, he did a remarkable job in that piece, and I'm really excited to share that video with all of you in the next few days. It's going to be really great. Man. Yeah, like, just even hearing Rob sing Nessun Dorma with Austin, of course, but Rob specifically, oh my gosh, just completely blew my expectations out of the water. Austin could sing that, and it would sound I mean, I'll give you that, but at the same time, you need to have some kind of musical structure. I mean, I guess you could improv it, but improving in jam sessions are typically not master classes in how to produce music. But, you know, who knows? Who knows? A lot of really great conceptual ideas have come out of jam sessions. So, So, give him a phone book. We'll see. Man, I am so exhausted. I have been putting in a lot of time into just structuring the skeleton of Patreon recently, and just getting enough content that not only I could be proud of, but to make content that would be worth like actually subscribing, like putting in paid subscriptions for. That is, I hold myself typically to a pretty high standard, and I really dislike cutting corners on things. So I know I've been advertising my upcoming Patreon for quite some time, and I've been pretty quiet about it. But honestly, it's just because, one, there's just a lot of stuff happening in life right now, and I'm trying to stay consistent just with a YouTube schedule, let alone keeping up with life, let alone keeping up with Patreon. But man, it like just a couple of my anime reactions for the higher tiers on Patreon. It's that just eats up so much time. Like those reaction videos take, like I was mentioning with music videos, I typically shave them down to something like 20 to 30 minutes, but the recording session is usually an hour. And with anime content, it's worse. It's typically an hour and a half to 2 hours of filming, and then about and then about the final product is something like 45 minutes to an hour, and it's just so it's just such an arduous process just grinding that kind of content out, and it just takes so much time. But when everything's up and running, I really think it'll be worth it, and I'm really excited for you guys to see the Patreon if you guys are interested. I'm putting a lot of work and effort into it, but man, I'm really excited for you guys to see it. It's definitely a labor of love, but it'll be really cool. It'll be really cool. I'm really excited. Yeah. Hey all, I see we have some new people. Welcome in. It's really great to have you guys here. Yeah, we're just talking about ideas, discussing future developments on the channel, good stuff like that. Also, if you guys are new to these live streams, I typically, just in between thoughts or ideas, I'll typically beatbox or sing. It usually just helps me keep the flow, keep the momentum of my thoughts just constantly moving. You should review Dimash doing the studio version. Amazing, just amazing. I will definitely keep that in mind. Let me actually add that to my list. I do have quite an expansive list, and I try to stay up to date on songs that come out recently, so reaction videos can be more popular the moment they come out. But I try to stockpile on a bunch of reactions that are more that people would always want to watch regardless of when they come out. Like, an example of that would be Disturbed's The Sound of Silence. That's a video that came out a long time ago, but the reaction just did well regardless. So I try to stockpile those videos, but always leave room for videos that just came out that I can be on top of. There aren't a ton of reactors for the beatboxing community, and not to say that I'm necessarily a part of the community, but I really do just love beatboxing as a whole, and it's and I love seeing what human capability and potential through different forms of art, and I think that's a very unique way of conceptualizing human potential through the voice. I've always been fascinated by the voice, which is why I love both opera and beatboxing. But man, it's tough, man. Will there be more Shogo reactions? Yes, I love Shogo. Shogo's an amazing beatboxer, but it is very tough to pump out more beatboxing content because they typically don't perform well. So I try to make videos that primarily perform well, but that being said, beatboxing videos, especially from artists that I love, like Shogo, those are always going to be consistent with the channel, and I'm not going to let up on those. You know, that's the heart of what I love about music, is just the fact that there's just so much capability and potential coming through them. And yeah, so fear not, Shogo videos are being stockpiled right now, and they're going to be released in due time. So thank you for your patience in that regard. Are you interested in blues singing from several years back? Stevie Ray Vaughan singing Texas Flood, and the guitar is unbelievable. Well, if you're asking if... Well, I'm not really sure what you're asking in that regard. Are you asking if I'm interested in the genre of blues, or if I can sing the blues? Because I definitely cannot sing the blues, but I do love the blues. Yeah, the genre itself is... I really dig it. Yeah, just the genre itself is really cool, and I like I just said, I really dig it. Beatboxing and looping by Rico Loop is top notch. Might be worth a look-see. By Rico Loop. Rico Loop. I don't think I've ever heard of that artist. Let me add him to the list. Rico Loop. Yeah, like I've heard a lot of different, like I have a pretty diverse understanding of a lot of different beatboxers and loop station artists and things like that, but I've never even once heard of that name, so I'm really excited to jump into that. Thank you for that recommendation. Yeah, it's like I'd have to say that in terms of looping, I'd probably say my top favorite artists in the loop station category would be, and in no particular order, Robin from France, Inky from Russia, I believe, I think KBA has some really good stuff. Same thing with Josho and M-Age. Yeah, they're really solid too. I think Frosty has some really, really good beats. Enemy. Yeah, Enemy for sure. I really dig his style. I think Rhythmind has a lot of really interesting ideas, but I don't connect to his music as much as I do some of the other artists I just mentioned. And yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good list of some of my tops. In terms of just straight solo beatboxing, oh man. Tell us something about you and the specific training you had. It would interest me to know exactly your training, just so we know. Sure. Let me see. Let me think. So I've always been interested in music and singing. My mother tells me that I was singing since I was 2, which isn't really like singing, but it's being more musically inclined in that regard. So, but when I was 14, that's when or late 13, 14, that's when I started professional voice lessons. And I had a teacher who was working at CalArts, or the California Institute of the Arts, and she was the dean of the vocal department, and I was lucky enough to study under her as her being my first voice teacher. And her husband, who was at the time the chairman for voice at UCLA, and his voice, oh my gosh, so like just hearing him speak, it was just so, it was like listening to Velvet, listening to the sensation of Velvet, if that makes sense. It was just so sultry and soft but warm and just completely envelops you. I got to study under her for a few years as I was making my way through high school. And during my time with her, I competed for the National Classical Singer Convention in the United States. And at that time, I had already been studying under her for a few years, and I was at that point a senior in college. Or not in college, in high school. And this was specifically for young artists under 18, which I was like 16 or 17 at that time. And I had already started applying to different universities, Chapman University being one of them. And when I started competing, this was my first real competition. I saw that the competition, one of the competition sites to perform was at Chapman. There were multiple sites all around the US, and if you pass, then everybody just coalesces over in Boston, Massachusetts. But you have to be, like, out of hundreds of thousands of young vocalists, it's narrowed down to, like, the top 100, 200, something like that. And so you have to be, like, the cream of the crop, to the creme de la creme to move on. And when I went to Chapman, the judges there were the same people that I had already auditioned for Chapman University. And ironically enough, I got accepted into Chapman University, and they even offered me a scholarship to go there, even though my SAT scores were horrible. But they offered me a scholarship because they really believed in my potential, but it was still too expensive for me to go there. So I ended up going to a cheaper university, but it was still a really great program and really great experience. Anyway, moving on from that, sorry, I'm getting my thoughts collected again. I went into Chapman for the second time, not just to apply or audition for Chapman, but for this competition. I saw some of the instructors that I originally auditioned for, and I ended up, and when I performed for them, I performed a completely different piece of music. They judged me based off of my performance and the way that I executed the piece of music, and just pretty much everything. Like, so when it comes to competitions, especially just auditioning in general, the very moment you enter the room, you are being judged by the way you're walking, by your facial expression, how much your arms are swaying. They tell if you're nervous or not, and that nervousness does contribute to the score. And there's just so many different elements. The way you introduce yourself, the way you introduce the piece, the way you enunciate the words of your piece. Before you even start singing, that's like half the battle, is just introducing yourself. So anyway, I got through the audition, and I was just doing this this competition more of just as I want to see where I stand in comparison to other vocalists my age, and I would love feedback from professionals. I didn't expect to get through to the next round, which I actually did. A week or two after I did that initial audition for the competition, I got in the mail an invitation saying, "Congratulations, we have officially selected you for moving on to Boston to the semifinal round." And my mother was floored, and I wish I could say that I was more surprised than I actually was. I had full confidence in my ability to move on, but I didn't have an expectation that I would, but I still believed that I was good and that it wasn't a shock, but I was pleasantly surprised, rather. So anyway, I went to Boston. I performed there, and that was the moment that I got to Boston was the first time I met my accompanist for the audition, and I met him 30 seconds before I went in to do the piece. And all I did was he just came up to me saying, "What's the tempo for the piece?" And I said, "This," but I had no practice with him, and I was not prepared for that. So when I did my audition, not my audition, but when I did my second round of being judged in this competition, it just did not go well. Like, my voice sounded great, and I was moving the piece well, but I was not in sync with my accompanist, and it was a disaster. But I still had a great time in Boston, and it was a really fun experience, and I learned a lot when I was there. There were a lot of master classes and things that I could attend alongside just having the opportunity to be out of my home state. So it was really, really cool. But yeah, I genuinely feel like if I had more time to practice with my accompanist, that I really could have made it to the finals, to the top 10 at least. But, you know, it is what it is, and I learned a lot from that experience. And from that point, I went to college at my local state university, and I had applied to 5 different colleges, a mix of both private and public universities, and I got accepted into 4 of them, regardless of my terrible SAT scores. So if you guys are still in high... Like, I know 0.1% of my audience is under the age of 18. But in case you're a part of that 0.1%, if you want to go into a field that isn't so targeted around academics, if you truly excel in what it is that you excel in, universities are going to want you regardless of your SAT scores. But it also depends on the university. Like, if you're going to an Ivy League college, obviously you need to have glowing recommendations and everything from not just your teachers in high school, but you need to have outstanding extracurriculars and a high GPA, high SAT, ACT, all this stuff. I had one true masterclass from hell. Oh, yeah. I actually really enjoy masterclasses, and I really just love the fact that you get to sit there and just listen to other people's mistakes and incorporate their mistakes into your own technique. There's a lot of good things that can come from that. Great description of the audition process. Thanks for your background. Clearly, you have paid some serious dues. You can still laugh at the tough parts. So good for you. Oh man, and I haven't even begun to scratch the surface. There's an adage that is said where it's my gosh, what's the adage? It's the master has failed more times than the apprentice has even attempted, and that is absolutely true. I have many great successes in my opera career, but that being said, those successes only came from countless failures. And when I say failures, I mean big, blundering failures. Like, I remember the very first time I auditioned for an opera was in university. I was a first-year student, fresh out of high school, and I was like 17 or 18. And when I went into the audition room, and my accompanist was kind of a nightmare. I walked in there, and we were doing Carmen, which is a very difficult opera, and it's sung in French, and French is my weakest language, especially at that point where I haven't been studying diction that long. The only things that I really knew how to sing comfortably were Spanish, Italian, a little bit of German, and English. And I was not good with Russian. I was not good with French. And it was just a nightmare. And there aren't many baritone roles in Carmen, but the Morales was the role I was auditioning for, which is a baritone role at the very beginning of the opera. And this is the first opera that was being performed at this newly built multi-million-dollar stage on campus grounds. And it's used for a variety of different performers. Yo-Yo Ma has performed there. The group Stomp has performed there. And Serge Tinkarian from System of a Down has performed there. Like, there's a lot of really big names that have performed on that stage. And this role would be the very first voice from my university to be performing on that stage. And it was such a tremendous honor. But when I went in to do that audition, oh my gosh, it couldn't have gone worse. Like my voice sounded nice, but man, I was butchering the French to the nth degree. It was horrible. So much so that the accompanist just completely stopped and said, "I have no idea where you are because you're butchering the French that bad." And it was straight out of a horror film. Like, I was just so transfixed and horrified at my audition. And the following day, I ran into one of the voice faculty who was also a judge for the students who were listening to the auditions, and he said, "Hey man, don't beat yourself too up on that audition. You know, you still sounded really great." And I said, no. But I ended up getting the role anyway, because they really saw a lot of potential, and they knew that the role was small enough for me to be able to handle it, but they knew that I could do it well, and that my voice could be a really good starting example of what's to come to perform on such an incredible stage. and I performed it to the best of my ability, and my original voice teacher came to see the show, and she thought my French was amazing because I really busted my butt for this role, regardless of how small it was. And ever since then, my opera career actually just took off from that point. I was able to study abroad in Germany for a little while, and I got to perform on some beautiful stages there. I got to perform in a palace and a castle. I got to perform in Mainau, which is a small little island, and oh my gosh, it like just so many incredible opportunities came right after that. And not to say that I wasn't failing and stumbling in the process during that, but man, it was like I just gained so much knowledge, and I was so heavily invested in what was happening. The moment that I graduated college, I started performing at local opera companies in Los Angeles. And I started off at a really small one, just up and coming, a nonprofit, essentially. I couldn't pay their actors a lot, but, you know, it's there to get the experience, the real-world experience outside of school. And that first experience was really rough because they couldn't perform, or because they couldn't hire, like, a bunch of true professionals. They could only hire like people who are willing to give their time, essentially, and that production wasn't really great. But you know, people saw me. I was networking. I got to perform at a little bit of a bigger opera company in Los Angeles, which was great. And then 2020 happened, and that just shut down all theaters. It shut down all live performances, and it absolutely destroyed me. But then at the same time, it also gave me some time to reflect and think about, well, I actually got to go to LA Opera. I actually got to talk to the people that ran LA Opera, and they said that if you are in the top 1% of all opera singers in the world, you earn 70% of your income through performing on that A-tier opera stage, and the rest of your income comes through teaching or performing at other companies. Like, and that's minimum 16 to 18 hours a day, every day, pretty much year round. And with that mixed with the nepotism and the cutthroat environment that everybody's just constantly stepping on each other to get roles or to downplay other people, and all of it is in the name of self-interest and promoting yourself as an artist. And it just wasn't what I loved. You know, I don't love opera specifically. I love music. I love being able to recognize the fact that human beauty, human potential, human capability is boundless, and you can keep pushing those bounds because you truly love something, not because you want to make a living out of it, but because you truly love it. And I have such a deep love and appreciation for humanity and what humanity is capable of. And that's why I love both opera singing and beatboxing. And I take such an interest in a myriad of different genres of music that might be considered antithetical to each other or polarizing from each other. Like, I can love opera music, but I can also really love rap and hip-hop music. I can also really enjoy heavy metal music or symphonic metal music. I can enjoy symphonies just as much as I can enjoy 8-bit Tetris music. You know, there's a lot of just things that I can really appreciate and enjoy about these types of music. And ultimately, when 2020 happened, that was also a life-changing year for me, not just because of it being 2020, but at that time, I was in a relationship that, and I've mentioned this before on other live streams, so I'm not going to go into depth on it here. But essentially, that relationship just completely destroyed me and broke me down to absolute nothing. And for 10 months, I picked up the pieces and started learning my life lessons and started figuring out, okay, I have to make a sustainable career for myself, so I'm going to start learning new trade skills. And that's when I started learning data analysis. That's when I started becoming a little bit more tech savvy. I do not like working with technology, so getting into this field was very challenging for me. My brain doesn't wrap around these concepts easily, but I had to do what I had to do, and I'm still going out of my way to try to find positions within that field. Not to say that I've given up on music. In the contrary, I love doing music, which is essentially also why I started this YouTube channel, just to share my appreciation for music. And I also know that there are tons of people out there who also experience music in a similar way that I do, and I love being able to have those connections with others, and to be exposed to new music. And just the moment that I actually started picking myself back up from leaving the opera scene and from this relationship that meant the world to me that ultimately failed. Well, I learned a lot from it, so I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure, but the relationship failed. But that being said, it was... Sorry. Little moment of catharsis there. Yeah, that's my background from music. At some point, I would absolutely love to be able to host either public or private recitals where I'm not doing the long, arduous hours of the constant choreographed with other people, relying on other people to really create something beautiful, even though I do love that feeling of participating in an opera and working with a bunch of people to create something truly magical and beautiful. To find, for everybody within that field to be at the same level of commitment is very difficult to find, especially when you're singing for smaller companies where people are just saying, I'm only going to give what I'm paid, and I'm not paid a lot, so I'm not going to give a lot. And that kind of mindset bothers me. But ultimately, I did everything I could to grow, and I know that if I truly wanted to stay in the field, regardless of the nepotism, regardless of the hard, arduous times, regardless of how many hours I would have to sink into it every single day, I know that I could make that top 1%. I know I could make it into those top opera houses, but it's just... like, I love music, and to be restricted like that, to destroy my mental and my emotional self to keep pursuing that, isn't what makes me love music. To make a living out of it actually started to make me resent music. So when I actually took a step back and started assessing it for what it meant to me, that's when I really started appreciating music again and really started loving it. So that's at least to me, that's the most important thing about music, isn't doing everything you can to make a career out of it, but doing everything you can to truly enjoy it and to appreciate the fact that you are making music. I remember when I was in my music history class, my music history teacher, who I adored because she was so passionate about music history, and that's how you know the class is going to be fun, regardless of the subject matter. If the teacher really loves what she's talking about, or he, then you can really immerse yourself in it too. You can share their enthusiasm regardless of the subject. And man, I remember learning about the first known recorded composer named Enheduena. And just being able to experience a love of something, regardless of how connected you are to it, there's just something so mystifying and magical about it. So that's essentially my upbringing through music. Starting at 14, competing, studying abroad, performing internationally, learning as much as I can from different artists and different vocal masters of all ages. And yeah, it's just something that just unforgettable experiences that I've made throughout my years so far, and I only have a lifetime more of experiences that I'm just so eager to go out and experience for myself. Let's see. What are some really harsh stories from music? Let me think about that for a second. Oh yeah. As to your audience, I'm 70 years old. You're absolutely right. You are never too old to start. Music is for everybody, people of all ages, regardless. And the fact that you're at least putting in an effort right now, kudos to you, man. Really proud of you for that. It is really hard to pick up on an instrument, even the voice. Like, just learning music in and of itself is such an arduous process. There's a saying that floats around in the music world, which is, if you're being a rocket scientist, and you're trying to figure out rocket science, it's the idea of, come on, guys, this isn't music theory, it's just rocket science. And it's the similar idea where music theory is just so convoluted and so expansive that it's just so difficult to even get a really good grasp on it. So to even engage with it and to take lessons and to better yourself within the field is so challenging, and hats off to you for that. I can see Christopher Lee playing you. I love Christopher Lee. I think he is such an amazing actor. Man, miss him a lot. If you're in, you're all in. I don't do things by half. Yeah, I mean, honestly, just, like, I do think that being a jack of all trades is a very beneficial thing, in the sense that you don't need to master everything that you engage with. As a matter of fact, I find it very difficult to master more than one thing. And when I say master, I don't mean excel. I mean understand in its nearest entirety, like I would call Marco Pierre White or Gordon Ramsay masters. I wouldn't call the head chef of a local bistro a master necessarily, but yeah, they might be. But I hope that you're getting my message of, you could be exceptionally skilled in something and not be a master. Anakin Skywalker wasn't a master. It's the idea of, there's so much more than just technical proficiency you need in order to be a master in something. You need experience. You need full understanding of the craft and arduous years of just full commitment to understand all of the lessons that you need to learn in order to fully excel at something. Like, I remember I heard a story of, like, there's a man that I really respect who had once said he wanted to learn Shaolin. And different masters of Shaolin interpret Shaolin and internalize it differently. Some are much more focused on the war fighting aspect of it. Some use it as a way of presenting strength or embodying strength while practicing peace. So it depends on the master. But I remember there was a guy who was a master and said, you need to master these drills and these 10 forms. And just to master one form took like 5 to 6 months. And if you can imagine just doing one action without breaks every day for the entirety of the day, like that's enough to destroy anyone's mental. You do one action 1,000 times and it's just, that's so difficult. Like, it's easier said than done, obviously. And he ended up not even being able to practice with him because he only mastered like 2 or 3 forms. And that was after he got a huge humbling lesson of, I think that I'm pretty athletic and strong, and doing these 3 forms and just not being able to practice with him at the end because he didn't master all 10. And mastery is such a challenging skill, is my point. So, and it's such a high bar. So, just to be able to go from novice to intermediate, I think is very, very beneficial for most people in most things. And what I mean by that is, like, using like athleticism, like we were just talking about, as an example. You know, if you went out of your way to go from an absolute novice to intermediate, not necessarily to advanced and not progressing through intermediate levels, but just to get a really core fundamental understanding of the rudiments of what it is that you're engaging with. Like, being able to do that with practicing ballet, practicing yoga, practicing weight training, weightlifting, practicing conditioning, boxing. And this is just for athletics. And there's just a myriad of different avenues that you can go down in terms of music. Trying orchestral music, trying independent solo guitar, maybe banjo, and understanding the workings around that. Or trying art, painting, drawing, trying, just exposing yourself to all of the different elements that humanity has produced for itself. And I ultimately think that the more you expose yourself to those things, and the more that you allow yourself to get to an intermediate level in each of those things, I think better rounds us as people. We become more knowledgeable and more sympathetic to people who arduously practice those things, who don't just stop at the intermediate level, but take it to the advanced levels, to take it to mastery even. And man, like, even to this day, I've been singing my whole life. I have such a deep love for music, and I wouldn't even call myself a master. I'm not, like, I couldn't humble myself, or I wouldn't have the temerity or audacity to call myself a master, even though I am very well trained and I have a lot of experience, and I've learned from some of the biggest names still alive in music today. Or not music, but opera specifically. It was just, man. You are spot on stepping away from the politics and nepotism of opera. Good for you. Thank you. I appreciate that. When you can snatch the pebbles from my hand, you're ready to leave. Yeah. Exactly my point. Esh, how's it going? Esh! It's going good, man. I saw that you commented on the beatbox videos, and I appreciate that. The beatboxing videos are the bread and butter of this channel, honestly. Like, obviously the most popular videos are videos of Dimash and Diana and things like that, but the beatboxing is what, to me, truly exemplifies a bizarre take on the human condition, of human potential, and what it is that we're truly capable of. And I love beatboxing so freaking much, and when those videos don't get a lot of love, it hurts a little bit, but at the same time I completely understand why. But at the same time, just the fact that like this last video, middle of the rhythm with collapse and hiss, amazing. they did such a great job with that. And the original video itself, I saw earlier this morning, had just 20,000 views, and I think that that's such a tragedy. Like, like, two just polished and refined masters, just like, these people are people who have truly mastered the fundamentals of beatboxing and have incorporated their own unique styles and sounds into something so complex. Like, another video that I actually just finished editing is Marcin and Tim Henson doing Classical Dragon. And those are two exceptional guitarists. Like, the future of guitar is in incredible hands with both of them leading the helm. They are just incredible guitarists. And for them to do a piece together, it blew my mind out of the water. And the fact that that video has less than 1 million views is mind-boggling to me. It is so, so good. And I don't know. People need more, need to expose themselves more beyond just the conventional music of whatever is popular, the Billboard 100. You know, there's a lot of really exceptional talent out there that I feel needs more of a spotlight than just another Drake or Kendrick Lamar song. Not to discredit their work or their talent, but there's so many other artists than the same artists we hear constantly over and over and over again. And to know that there's still so much incredible talent out there and people who truly just break their backs in pursuit of excellence in their art, oh, that speaks to my soul, you know? You can call yourself a master of life and change. I really appreciate that, and it's very challenging to accept change. I feel like anybody would find it a challenge to accept change, even the people who are most open to it. But even then, like, we need to have something foundational, something fundamental that we can build ourselves on top of, not just shifting sand, but something sturdy. So when change inevitably happens, we need to be able to adapt to it, but not lose ourselves in it. Not completely sink into the shifting sand, but have something sturdy and strong that we can truly call our own. And man, it's really tough because I'm someone who definitely believes in, like, as someone who has a recalcitrance towards authority, and someone who's also very introverted, I have no issue with going against the grain when it comes to having an opinion about something. I have no issue with challenging the status quo or proprieties of conventional society, only if it's warranted. Not to say that I go out of my way to challenge the status quo just because. But if there's something that genuinely goes against what I truly believe is the right or wrong thing to do, then I'll just do that. Not to attempt to proselytize others, but just to say, this is what I truly think is the right thing for me, and this is how I'm going to engage in with the world in a way that is authentic and righteous for me. And it doesn't matter if other people resent me for it. It doesn't matter if other people reject me for it, because the people in my life that know me, and especially that disagree with me, those are the people that I love more than anything. I have a very diverse friend group, and I have 5 friends, and only 5 friends, and I don't have social media outside of YouTube. And those 5 friends are so extremely diverse from each other. They all have a different moral matrix from each other. They have different values, different beliefs, a different view of the world, different experiences. And I love them all so dearly not because we share the same views on things, but actually the polar opposite, because we're so different. Because I love our differences. I love the fact that we engage with the world in a way that's so enriching. Like, how can I possibly understand the world from a different point of view if I'm surrounding myself with people who think like me, with people who have the same value system as me. It's so like one of my closest friends, he is his moral matrix is very different than mine, and we do not agree when it comes to like the way that we engage with society, either religiously or politically or in terms of our worldview. But that being said, he's one of the most compassionate people I've met. He's one of the funniest people I've met. And just being in his company just elevates my mood tenfold. Regardless of our worldviews, regardless of our differences, we can share those differences in a way that's just so enriching and allows our worldview to expand because of how different they are. And the same is true for my partner, who is also my best friend. The same is true for all of my close friends. And that's the point, is the fact that to adapt and to change and to grow and to keep expanding your horizons, but still have the core of yourself be foundational, be exactly the kind of person that you are truly and authentically yourself with. I think that's it. I really do. I enjoy your insights so much. Well, thank you. I look forward to all of your reactions. Gotta keep rewatching your old ones. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yes! The most fundamental principle and energy we all need to adhere to is simple. Love and treat each other with love. Yeah, and it's not even just love. It's accepting what love is. And love is not just love. Love is one side of a coin or not even of a coin. Love is one human emotion of everything that we can feel. With love comes the potential for loss, the potential for resentment, the potential for jealousy, anger, hatred. And it's being able to understand that, like in terms with me and my current partner, who is also my best friend. And the reason I say that she's my best friend is primarily because, and she knows this, I know this, and we both agree on this, very thankfully, is the fact that we find the value in our relationship not in the intimacy, not in the romance, but in the actual fundamental of what our relationship is, which is we love each other's company. We love that we can constantly make each other grow as people. And we love how open and direct and honest we can be. And regardless if our words come out as harsh or too direct or come out even incorrectly, we understand where our hearts are at, where the intention is coming from. And we know the kinds of people that we are and the kinds of people that we're molding ourselves to be. So to love someone is to accept the fact that you are going to feel resentment at some point. You are going to feel potentially resentment, or you are going to feel loss or hatred or envy or things that we would generally perceive as negative. But these things are not necessarily negative. No emotion itself is negative. Looking at it from an outside looking in lens. You can utilize this type of energy. Like if you've ever been just completely filled with one raw emotion like hatred or rage, then you know that if you're completely consumed by it, then that you have an enormous amount of untapped energy that people usually expel through hitting something or screaming into a pillow or whatever the case is, just to expel some of that energy. But if you can actually utilize that energy instead of just facing it head on, if you just put it behind you, you can use that energy to propel you to greater heights. And a great example of that is an I'll show you energy. If you put your work out into the world and people reject it vehemently, you can absorb some of that energy of I'll show you how great I am, and then you just take that energy and refine your craft to such a degree that you actually begin excelling, that people actually begin recognizing your work for what it is. And that to me is an exceptional mark of utilizing very raw energy and being productive with it, using it in a way that's meaningful and impactful and can better society. Like after I was completely crushed in 2020, I said, what can I do to not only I started reading so much, and I started recognizing that most people typically act in their self-interest. And I wanted to prove to myself that it wasn't just in my self-interest, but my genuine love for humanity and for bettering my environment around me. What is it that I can do to genuinely do these things? And I started picking up trash at a park, not with a group, not with anybody. I just take one of my own trash bags. I grab one of those little claw things and I just go to a park and I just pick up trash, and that's it. You know, regardless if it's hot or if it's raining or whatever the conditions are, I just do it because I know it's the right thing to do, and it makes me feel good as a person. If I feel really terrible on one day and I really don't want to work out, I just want to stay in bed, whatever, I'm going to work out anyway. You know, it's having the mental of not just appearing righteous, not just appearing like you're doing the right thing, but on those days where you really just don't want to do something, or it's at your inconvenience, can you still go out and do the thing that you believe is truly the right thing? And it is truly difficult to actually do those when nobody's watching. Do it with actual honor and integrity. And I work hard every day to try to exemplify, not to others, to myself specifically, because I am very naturally lazy. So to keep consistent with YouTube is one of those things. To keep consistent with making Patreon videos. To keep consistent with throwing out job applications. With staying consistent with my data analysis stuff. To constantly improve my singing and beatboxing even though I'm not in the scene anymore. Like, all of these things, showing compassion to others, fulfilling my life's task of showing unconditional positive regard to all people, to going out of my way and trying to learn languages regardless of how challenging it is, so I can communicate with others in a way that makes them feel not just comfortable, but it allows me to experience their culture, allows me to experience their livelihood, allows me to just embrace humanity. My love for humanity is so deep that when people just badmouth it, saying humanity is the worst thing to happen to the world, like, it pains me. Like, humanity is capable of so much, yes, great evil, but great good. And the moment that we can actually recognize in all people this element of great good and great evil, then we can actually start producing things of genuine value. You know, like, there was a period of time when I adhered to a particular political side. And if I wanted to continue being in that side, I needed to adhere to the value system of that side. I needed to adhere to the particular beliefs and core values of that side. And I hated it because I couldn't be myself. I couldn't find the nuance in things. I had to believe what the party believed, and it just drove me nuts, man. Like, it just came to the point where I disassociated myself from every community, from every group that I was a part of, and I felt so, and that was also the point that I just got rid of all of social media, and I felt so liberated. Oh my gosh. like being able to understand what my own bias is, and being able to provide criticism from an outsider's perspective, one who isn't caught up in the internal politics of a particular group or community. It was so refreshing, and I felt so alleviated, and it just contributed to what it is that I truly love about engaging with others in any particular topic, which is, I don't think there's any right or particular wrong way to engage with an issue. everybody lives their life in a way that makes sense to them, even if those things are irrational. Ultimately, if they're emotionally connected to something, even if it's irrational, then it makes sense. Then it makes sense to them on some intuitive level, and they're living their life by it, and I respect it. You know, if we could just like, if we could just have a little bit more, like, don't get me wrong, I think generalizations are fine when we don't have enough time to truly engage with others in a way that's very rich and meaningful, and people are very fleeting in our lives. There's 8 billion people on this planet. We can't possibly get to understand each and every one of them on such a deep personal level. So understanding just like brief, superficial layers of people might be necessary in some instances, but it goes to this adage of, you know, you never know what someone is experiencing or going through. You never, like, two people can go to Disneyland and on the exact same day, exact same weather, exact same lines, exact same food, exact same everything, but have two completely different experiences based off of how they internalize it, based off of their life up till that point, experiencing that day of Disneyland together. So it, you know, it just comes to a point of, can we open our minds and our hearts enough to not be vulnerable and weak and to not play a victim, but to come from a position of strength and to say, you know, it's the idea of being a warrior in a garden, not a gardener in a battlefield. And just being able to show kindness and compassion with, but also having the necessary inner strength, mental strength, physical strength, and resilience to understand when people are playing power games with you, to understand when people are trying to manipulate, control, or gaslight you, and to be able to navigate that in a way that is stern and strict and direct, but also comes from a place of genuine sincerity and authenticity. And one of the books that really helped me with that is Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power, where I was actually able to understand a lot more of when people play power games. And I actually recognize it considerably in society, especially done by master orators or demagogues in some instances. So it's, to be able to adapt and to change and to grow is definitely necessary. And I deeply appreciate the comment of calling me a master of such a thing. I still struggle with it, so I don't know how much I can internalize that compliment in a way that feels very genuine and real to me, but the sentiment is something that I hold very dear to me. So thank you so much for that comment. And I have to catch up with all of these other messages. I'm so sorry for rambling. I look forward to all your... Yes. Is there somewhere I can support or donate to you? I would love to. Oh my god! Thank you so much! Oh my gosh, that means a lot. I never expect people to donate to me or to support me directly. God, that means a lot. Thank you so much. And yeah, you can either donate through super chats, through live streaming. There's options to donate through videos themselves. I'm still working on my Patreon right now, which is going to have 3 different tier systems, all having their own exclusive benefits. And that should be coming out hopefully within the next few weeks. I'm still trying to make a lot of content for it because I need to make sure that if people are actually paying to watch my videos, that the content is worth it, that there's enough videos that aren't just on YouTube, but are far ahead of YouTube, that are really informative, and you guys can really just enjoy your time with me. And I really need to make sure Patreon is worth it for you guys, if you guys are actually paying money to see me. And I really need to give it my all in that, and that's why it's taking so long for me to form it. But I have actually, as of yesterday, have just finished the skeleton of it, the structure of it, and now it's just making the content for it. And I've had to do so many redos and do-overs, and I've had to just arduously make things for it, and it's so tough, but I think it'll really be worth it when it goes live, and I will absolutely let you guys know. But until then, yeah, the best way to donate, as of at least right now, is either directly through videos, or through this live stream, through super chatting, and yeah. So thank you so much. I can't express that enough. The super chat doesn't give the base payout to creators. You're absolutely right. YouTube takes 30% of all money, and especially if you're on an Apple product, Apple takes 20%. So if you're on an Apple product and you donate, I only get 50%, where YouTube takes 30% and Apple takes 20%. So the best way to support me would be through Patreon, but unfortunately that just isn't live yet. But until then, those are the best ways. So I really appreciate you even considering donating and supporting me and the channel. Like, thank you. As much as I love cats, thou shalt not even attempt to put Blue in a box. Kindness is my commandment. Be excellent to each other. Yeah. I am unfortunately allergic to cats, but I love cats too. I love dogs the most. I relate to dogs the most, but I really do love cats, and it is a darn shame that I am allergic. It's either to the dandruff or the fur or something, but regardless, and it's not intense, but it is an allergy that just makes me feel miserable. But man, cats, some cats are just great. In life, no pain, no gain. Very cliche, but true. Yeah, and that's the whole point. Like, if you look at life for what it is, if you want to look at it from an evolutionary perspective, it's just that. Evolution is change. It's consistent growth through just countless generations, tens or hundreds of thousands of years of development and growth of those, even generationally. There's just consistent growth and consistent growth. So, but if we're looking at it on a more individual level, when you're going through puberty, or heck, when you're just, even before puberty, when you're just growing through life from being an infant and just growing and maturing, your body feels sore on some mornings. And why is that? That's growing pains. Your body is stretching. When you go to the gym and you work out and you feel that soreness, well, like, if you stretched really well, you might not feel the soreness. But generally, especially if you haven't worked out for a long time, you'll feel that soreness. And I actually really love that soreness. I love that soreness feeling. It is uncomfortable, but it's not so much discomfort that you're drowning in it. And if you can actually persuade yourself to truly enjoy that feeling of discomfort but not drowning in it, and you can thrive in that kind of environment, in that kind of setting, then I think you are one of the most unstoppable people on the planet, because now you're in a position of consistent growth. Like, I had so much neck fat beforehand. I still kind of do, but but my stomach was much more beer-bellied, and it's becoming so much more slimmer just because of my consistency in working out. And I don't like necessarily working out, but it's become so habitual and a part of my routine that I actually enjoy it at least on some degree. I don't enjoy feeling exhausted, but I like seeing myself in sweat. It lets me know that I'm actually putting in, like, it's a physical representation of the work that I'm putting in to better myself. And it's not like I like the feeling of being covered in sweat, but I like being able to observe the fact that I'm working really hard towards not just a goal, but towards structuring a routine that is ultimately productive and healthy for my well-being. Like, I used to be, like, the food that I ate not necessarily was the healthiest things. Like, I used to eat bricks of cheese straight off the brick. Like, I was obsessed with cheese, and I'm lactose intolerant, which was an absolute nightmare for me. But then I just took it in moderation. I started making salads a lot more, and I started enjoying salads, and just putting a little bit of grated cheese on that so I can still get my cheese hits. but now it's in a way that's much more manageable. I'm eating considerably better than I used to. I hardly ever eat fast food anymore. And I just do my best to stay consistent in the way that I eat, in the way that I work out, in the way that I tackle my work, but make sure that I'm still trying to take care of myself, my physical self, and my mental self as best as I can, while also existing in that realm of discomfort. What is something that I can do today that would be at my inconvenience that is genuinely for my benefit, and trying my best to engage with that in a way that's meaningful and rich but doesn't drown me. And I think those are the key takeaways. I'm not always kind, but I try. Hey, I feed people. Want a cookie? I mean, it's not always about being kind. Like, for me, I believe showing true compassion to someone is telling someone what they would need to hear, not what they want to hear. But then again, who are you to say what it is that another person needs? And that requires a lot of nuance, a lot of introspection, and a lot of sympathy and empathy, or just a lot of sympathy in general, let alone empathy and compassion to the situation. And for me, I'm very awkward in real life. So when I tell someone what I think they might need to hear, it can come across as very harsh, very direct, and in some cases it can come across as very not abusive, but just insensitive. And that's what I really love about my friend group, is that even in those moments where I do come across in those ways, that they understand what my intentions are, and they take my words at a superficial level and try to really dig deep into why it is that I'm saying the things that I'm saying. What is it that I see about them that I truly want them to succeed in? And what's the core idea of not what it is that I'm directly saying, but what it is that I'm trying to express? And it's very difficult to see that for what it is, especially if you're in an emotionally raw place. And I'm someone who operates under the impression that the truth is always ultimately a good thing. Always. if you have the strength to embrace it. And unfortunately, even for me, there are many instances where the truth is about any particular situation is just too painful to accept, and you continue deluding yourself in a realm of hope or potential of, I believe this can get better, even though there's an opportunity staring you straight in the face saying, this is not for you. There are other avenues of life that you can go down, but it's knowing when to call it quits in some instances. It's not always about keep grinding and you'll eventually make it. Sometimes it's recognizing the fact that you're not suited for particular things. Sometimes it's recognizing the fact that the work that you thought you needed to put into something is actually the very base of something. And if you were busting your butt 16 hours a day for a particular goal for years, and then you just started realizing that, congratulations, you just made it to the starting line, that could be a very harsh reality to accept. Like, I remember using that relationship that I was mentioning before, when one of my close friends, who was a mutual friend between me and my ex, my partner at the time, he just directly told me she cheated. And I was so confused. I had no idea what he was talking about. Like, what do you mean? Like, what was it, just this? And he said, think about what I just told you and everything that implies. That is what happened. And that kind of directness, it was unbearable to accept at first, but it led me to better outcomes. It led me to a complete reconstruction of my life in a way that's so much more rich and so much more robust, and it allows me to expand and to grow while also being strong and firm in what I built for myself, my character, my principles, my code of ethics, my morals, just everything that I built for myself and taken from various walks of life and have incorporated into what makes me uniquely me. And I couldn't have been there without the pain and the arduous times. Like, people, like, I see a lot of people trying to structure society where we can live in some kind of utopia where everybody thinks the same and everybody has the same moral matrix and everybody is always on the same wavelength and we all live in happy times. And the world is not happy. The world is actually a very dark and a very cruel place. You look at nature in and of itself, it's a very dark place. And I feel like it's our responsibility as human beings to recognize that darkness and to do our best to contribute goodness in a way that's authentic to each one of us as human beings, and to contribute some semblance of true goodness, not just towards ourselves, but towards others. And obviously, not many people share this view with me, because it also implies the fact that sharing the same moral matrix is not necessarily necessary. That even though there's tremendous advantages to such a thing, that to have a certain level of diversity in terms of our morality or in terms of our ethics and principles. Having diversity can be a very good thing and enriching, but at the same time, sharing common goals, sharing a common vision towards betterment in a particular field is also very advantageous. So I think it's taking a little bit of both and incorporating it into a healthy society where we're constantly challenging ideas, we're constantly challenging our views on the current state of perhaps politics or morality or or principles in business or whatever the case is. And it's taking these individual elements, understanding what works, what doesn't work, what contributes to detriment versus what contributes to betterment. Like, having too much diversity in an area can cause complete collapse, while having too much of one particular vision of something can also cause complete stagnation and not grow beyond the times. So having elements that you can draw from, and having a more, and this leads back into my conversation on mastery earlier, and that's another really great book by Robert Greene, Mastery. I recommend it absolutely, where it's just said under the impression of, this is what it means to just fully engage with something that's beyond your scope, that you might not understand all of the nuances of something, but to keep going out of your way and exposing yourself to the world and getting to that intermediate level of proficiency in as many topics as possible, truly being a jack of all trades, master of none, and just broadening your horizons as much as possible. And that being said, there is no substitute for a specialist. There is no substitute for someone who is truly a master in their field. They're the ones pushing the field to new heights, to new boundaries, or expanding the boundaries. They're the ones expanding their universe. And there's no substitute for that. But at least for me, and what it is that I want for myself, I find it so valuable to keep broadening myself, to keep allowing myself to engage with something and to achieve a certain level of intermediate proficiency in it before choosing whether to engage on a more deep and intuitive level, or to recognize that I've gotten what I needed to get from this and to move forward. I find just so much value in that. I know many that have video requests that can be sent through Streamlabs. I unfortunately do not use Streamlabs. I use OBS. But thank you for that. Okay, guide me. I have a serviceable contralto. I have trouble with the soprano range. It can hurt my ears. I love Sarah Brightman, and I adore Bartoli, Queen of the Lanite. Rigidity is the enemy. That's why it's called rigor mortis. Best savored after death. I have a serviceable. Okay, so I feel like the biggest thing in terms of that is making sure that you're not overexerting yourself. You're not trying to hit notes that are tremendously outside of your range. And I mentioned in another video that warm-ups can, at least when I was really in the thick of it, that warm-ups at least take 30 minutes, if not 45 minutes. There was a time when my warm-ups took an hour. And warm-ups not just include physical exercises and stretches, but obviously vocal exercises. And the beautiful thing about warm-ups is that you and your teacher, or you and yourself, but hopefully you have some kind of mentor that's instructing you as to what to do, that you actually trust and know that they are producing good things from you that aren't actually destroying you. Because Lord knows, me and my sister have both had just awful teachers in our time, regardless of how brief they were there. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, it's being able to have no judgment when you're reaching new low notes, when you're reaching new high notes, and trying to stay as grounded as possible, trying to sing and project in a way that isn't fully pushing yourself, like you're not straining, but you are doing your best to expand your voice. But also, it's, again, having the recognition that your voice is only capable of so much. You know, like, when I was, especially in high school, I was obsessed with hitting bass notes. My voice, my register is baritone, bass baritone at the lowest. And honestly, my voice is baritone. But I was obsessed with hitting bass notes. And it was very rare, but there were some times when I was able to hit them. But man, my voice is not suited for that. And I tried day in, day out to expand my range to something that would just not get to that level. And it was a very humbling experience because I refused to accept it for years. That's how stubborn I was. For years, I refused to accept that I couldn't expand my range larger than it was capable of. And I eventually got to that point where, even though I had so much more mastery of my voice and control of it, that my range ultimately maxed out at around 2.5, 2 3/4 octaves. And, you know, that works for me. When I did my first opera, I had to sing notes that were well outside of my range, and I expanded into them. So it's not to say that expanding into notes isn't impossible. You are absolutely able to do that. But it's also recognizing what it is and what it is not that you are capable of. So just being honest with yourself, I think, is a really great first step forward. But, you know, I'm not your teacher, and I don't know what you sound like, and I would need to be there in person to see how you're standing, to see how it is you're breathing, to see how it is you're vocalizing, to see what it is that you're doing in your warm-ups and your physical stretches. There's so much nuance that goes into how you, in particular, as an individual, approach notes. And if I was a teacher, well, if I was your teacher, I would need to be there in person to watch it and to see what it is that you're specifically doing. So to give you direct advice as to how to do it, I would not feel comfortable providing that, just because I just don't know how you perform or sing or do any of these things well enough, unfortunately. I'm sorry that that's not probably the answer you wanted to hear, but I don't want to give any advice or tips if it might end up actually hurting or straining you. You know, if people want to engage with music in a way that's very rich and authentic and they want to grow, the last thing that I would want to do is destroy their instrument. My contralto is mostly spoken. People don't run from the room when I sing. That's a great note. I have sung with many of people who are completely tone deaf, and they don't even know it, and they refuse to accept the fact that they are. And not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it just means to say that you either need to work arduously on improving your ability to match your voice with notes, like the very base fundamentals of music, of just getting your voice in alignment with a tuned instrument. And then you can begin to actually vocalize, do warm-ups, and then you can begin to start singing pieces. But man, it is tough. It is really tough to go from someone tone deaf into a master of an instrument. Not to say that it's impossible, but it is tough, and you need to be really dedicated, driven, and committed to making that work. So the fact that people are willing to actually listen, man, you are already leaps and bounds above those people who don't even recognize their tone deafness. So good on you for having that already great level of skill. I don't know what worked against my stage career. The fact that I was only 5 feet tall or my deep voice as a woman. Yeah, I mean, I think women with deep voices are exceptionally more rare than women with high voices. Sopranos have it the worst in the opera industry because there's so many of them. For every one baritone, there's 10 sopranos, you know? But I think the same is true for contraltos. Heck, even for every one contralto, there's 10 mezzos, and for every one mezzo, there's 10 sopranos. It's just the Russian doll. It's just constantly getting stacked in. But no, having a deep voice is enormously powerful. And yeah, your height does matter when landing roles for things. Sometimes Hansel and Gretel. Both Hansel and Gretel are typically played by women because being a young boy, your voice is typically higher. My voice was always moderately low, so says my mother. But no, it's the idea that if you are both short in stature and your voice is low, you're actually much more well fit for certain roles. And sometimes if you perform that role to its absolute maximum extent, you can get recurring roles of that same role by different companies and keep getting hired for that thing. So that way you don't have to keep learning new music and learning how to invest your, learning the musical structure, how you're going to approach it, and learning, these are the areas that I'm going to breathe in, and doing that throughout an entire 2.5-hour opera. But if you're doing something that you're familiar with, I performed the role of Leporello from Mozart's Don Giovanni a few times. So on the third time that I did it, I was very well versed in the role. I knew exactly how to approach each of the recitatives and each of the arias. I knew exactly how to interact with other characters, and I didn't have to worry about that in the process. I got to actually explore and experiment with new ideas as to how I can further elevate the role of Leporello, and that's what I really loved about doing that role. Plus, I love Leporello as a character. He's so fun and whimsical. I understand that Mozart hated the soprano when they were working with at the time. Maybe that's why Queen of the Night drives me nuts. Yeah, absolutely. Mozart hated the soprano when he was working with the magic flute for the Queen of the Night. And he just wanted to make her life as miserable as possible by making an aria that would be near impossible to perform. And he had so much joy just completely destroying her in that aria. He was such a troll, but we love him for it. I'll tell you about the chili cook-off someday. Yeah, please do. But with that being said, we went well over our 1.5-hour mark, and my voice is getting tired. So, and on top of that, my battery is dying. So, with all of that said, I deeply appreciate all of you being here with me. Again, the fact that you guys reached out to ask to donate and support the channel, it means so much to me. It's ineffable. I really don't even have the words to express that how much it means that there are people out there who genuinely wish for my success and the channel's success, and that I'm actually producing content that you guys truly enjoy and find enriching, that you would actually pay money for, especially in this kind of economic standpoint in society. So it really moves me, the fact that you guys would ask to donate. And I can't even begin to express how much that means to me. The moment I get Patreon up and running, I will absolutely let you guys know, and it will hopefully be well worth it. It truly means a lot to me that you guys are here. I can't express that enough. I'm so sorry that your day was a hellish day, but I'm glad that I could hopefully provide a little light within that darkness. Thank you so much for being here. It means so much to me, and I say this at the end of every video if you guys don't immediately click away from it, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. It really does mean a lot to me, and I'm so excited to see all of you in the next video. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone.